Deep in the frozen lands of Siberia, humans discovered a secret never meant to be seen. A hidden gate buried beneath the ice could change everything we know about the universe. A silent watcher recording every move and a warning older than humanity itself. Some discoveries are meant to remain hidden until now. Did this story blow your mind? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more incredible real-life discoveries. The drilling operation began as a routine climate study, with scientists working in one of the coldest and most silent places on Earth, deep in Siberia, where the land stayed frozen for tens of thousands of years. The team expected ice, soil, and maybe ancient plant remains, nothing more than data for charts and reports. The machines slowly chewed through layers of permafrost that had never melted in recorded history. Day after day, the drill went deeper, while the wind howled above and the sun barely showed itself. At nearly 2 kilometers below the surface, the drill suddenly stopped, not because it broke, but because it hit something solid, something far harder than stone. The sensors showed no cracks, no fractures, and no signs of natural rock formations. The material did not match anything found in geology records. At first, the crew thought it was an error, so they recalibrated the equipment and tried again. But the drill head could not move even a single centimeter further. Curiosity replaced routine as engineers lowered cameras into the shaft. The first images came back blurry due to extreme cold. But as the lens adjusted, a smooth surface appeared. It was perfectly flat, unnaturally clean, and shaped with sharp angles that nature never creates on its own. There were no tool marks, no scratches, and no signs of erosion, as if time itself had avoided touching it. The surface reflected light in strange ways, not like metal or stone, but something in between. The cameras showed faint lines running across it, forming patterns that repeated with mathematical precision. The longer the team looked, the more unsettling it became. This was not a buried ruin or a lost city. It was something placed there deliberately, deep under ice that formed long before humans walked the Earth. News of the find reached authorities within hours, and the research site was quietly locked down. Military helicopters replaced supply planes, and new personnel arrived without explanation. The original scientists were ordered to continue their work, but were no longer allowed to share data freely. Every recording, image, and sensor reading was now monitored. Yet even the officials could not hide their confusion. As more ice was carefully removed, the structure began to reveal its true scale. It was not a wall or a floor, but a curved surface, suggesting something massive beneath the frozen ground. Calculations showed that the object was far larger than the drilling site, possibly stretching hundreds of meters in diameter, buried so deep that no natural process could explain its position. Stranger still, the surrounding ice showed signs of controlled freezing, layers arranged too evenly, as if the object itself had influenced how the permafrost formed around it. Some scientists suggested the ice was not just covering the structure, but protecting it, sealing it away intentionally. The idea sounded impossible, yet no other explanation fit the evidence. Then the instruments began to behave oddly. Magnetic readings fluctuated near the surface of the object. Clocks lost milliseconds of time, and electronic equipment experienced brief failures without cause. No radiation was detected, no heat, no movement, yet the environment felt disturbed, as if the ground itself was aware of being watched. Late one night, as the team worked in silence, a low vibration passed through the drill shaft, too weak to be felt by human hands, but clearly visible on the sensors. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to change everything. The object was not dead, not inactive, and not unaware. It had responded. Fear mixed with awe as the realization set in. Whatever lay beneath the Siberian ice was not a forgotten relic of the past. It was something that had waited, hidden and untouched through ice ages and extinctions, until humanity reached deep enough to find it. And the discovery beneath the ice marked the moment humans crossed a line they never knew existed. After the vibration was recorded, the research team focused all attention on monitoring equipment, expecting silence to return. Instead, the sensors began to pick up faint signals coming from the buried structure. The signals were weak but steady, repeating in slow cycles that did not match natural seismic activity. At first, many believed it was background noise caused by drilling stress. but the patterns remained even after all machinery was shut down. The signals were not sound and not vibration. They were something else entirely, low-frequency pulses that moved through the ground like whispers. Computers struggled to label them. They were not radio waves, not magnetic storms, and not electrical leakage. Every scientific category failed to describe what was being detected, which made the discovery even more unsettling. As days passed, the pulses became clearer, repeating with perfect timing. Engineers noticed that the gaps between each pulse followed precise numerical intervals. When mathematicians were brought in, they realized the intervals matched complex ratios found in advanced mathematics, ratios that humans only fully understood in recent centuries. Yet these signals were coming from something buried for tens of thousands of years. The team tried to locate the source of the signals. Sensors were spread wider and deeper. But no matter where they measured, the pulses seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. There was no central point, no core, no obvious origin. It was as if the entire structure was communicating as a single system. Tension grew at the site as more specialists arrived. Linguists, physicists, and signal experts worked day and night. Some believed the signals were a form of language. Others thought they were automated status checks, like a machine quietly confirming its own existence. The most troubling idea was that the signals might not be meant for humans at all. Attempts were made to respond. Controlled electromagnetic pulses were sent toward the structure, carefully chosen to avoid damage. For hours, there was no reaction. Then suddenly, the original signals shifted. The timing changed. The rhythm adjusted. The structure had reacted, not randomly, but in direct response, confirming that the signals were not natural and not accidental. Fear spread quietly among the crew. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone felt the same thought forming. Something under the ice was aware of them. Security was tightened further. All communications were restricted. Even personal messages were delayed or blocked. The site felt less like a research station and more like a containment zone. As analysis continued, the signals revealed deeper complexity. Layered patterns within patterns, like messages hidden inside messages. Computers required custom algorithms to separate the layers. And when they did, the results were shocking. Some layers appeared to represent star positions. Others represented time cycles far longer than human history, suggesting the signals were part of a system designed to operate across cosmic timescales. One scientist proposed that the structure was not sending a message outward, but maintaining a lock, a continuous signal meant to hold something stable or closed, if that was true. Then the biggest danger was not the signals themselves, but what might happen if they stopped. The team searched historical data, ice core samples, and geological records, looking for any sign that the signals had ever changed before. There were none, which meant the pulses had been stable for longer than recorded human civilization. The idea that such a system could function perfectly for so long defied everything known about technology. Late into one shift, an anomaly appeared, a brief pause in the signal sequence. Less than a second, but enough to be noticed. Alarms went off across monitoring stations. The pause corrected itself immediately, but the meaning was clear. The system could fail, or worse, it could be adjusting. That night, no one slept. The signals continued, calm and precise, but they no longer felt passive. They felt watchful, like a presence that had noticed movement after a very long silence. And the team realized that by listening, by measuring, by responding, humanity may have already become part of a process that began long before Earth belonged to them. The change began without warning. During what was meant to be a simple system check, engineers increased sensor sensitivity by a small margin, expecting clearer data and nothing more. But the moment the adjustment was made, the buried structure reacted in a way no one predicted. The low-frequency signals stopped completely, replaced by a deep silence that felt heavier than noise. Within seconds, the smooth surface below the ice began to glow, not with light, but with a distortion. Cameras showed the air itself bending near the structure, as if space was being pulled inward. Instruments struggled to focus. Numbers on screens spiked wildly, then settled into patterns that no human system had been programmed to recognize. The ice around the structure started to shift, not cracking violently, but moving aside with careful precision. Layers that had been frozen solid for ages peeled back as if guided by invisible hands. The temperature did not rise, no melting occurred. Yet the permafrost opened cleanly, revealing more of the curved surface beneath, confirming that the object was far larger than anyone had imagined. As more of the structure emerged, its true form became clear. It was a massive ring, standing upright beneath the ground, its edges lined with the same glowing distortions. The ring was not built like any human machine. There were no visible joints, no bolts, no seams. It looked grown rather than constructed, shaped by rules beyond known engineering. Then the space inside the ring changed. What had been solid darkness became depthless, a black surface that reflected nothing. Lasers aimed into it did not bounce back. Cameras could not see through it, but sensors showed the space inside the ring was no longer empty. It was active, layered with energies that twisted together like currents in deep water. Panic spread as readings across the site began to shift. Gravity fluctuated slightly near the ring, enough to make people feel lightheaded. Magnetic fields bent inward, and compasses spun uselessly. The ring was not just opening, it was altering the environment around it, asserting control over local space itself. Authorities ordered an immediate halt to all interaction, but the command came too late. The activation process continued on its own. As if triggered by human presence and no longer dependent on it, alarms blared as power systems failed and rebooted repeatedly. The research station lights flickered while backup generators struggled to keep up. Military forces moved in fast, satellites were redirected, airspace was locked down, and the entire region vanished from public maps within hours. Soldiers were ordered to keep their distance, weapons ready but useless against something that ignored physical force entirely. No one knew whether the ring was a gateway, a weapon, or something far worse. The moment that changed everything came when a drone was sent closer, not inside the ring, just near it. The drone's feed showed the space within the ring ripple, like a surface reacting to touch. Then images appeared, not reflections, but scenes, impossible landscapes filled with structures larger than cities. Stars burning in unnatural colors, and shadows moving where no light source existed. The drone did not cross over, yet the images were clear, suggesting the ring was not opening a path, but a window, or perhaps something more dangerous, a connection without distance, linking Earth to places that did not obey the same laws of time and space. Scientists realized then that this was not an accident. The structure had been waiting for a specific level of awareness, a threshold of technology and curiosity. Once humans reached it, the system responded exactly as designed. The gate had not been discovered. It had been allowed to activate. As the activation stabilized, a final realization settled over the site. This gate was not built for humans to use freely. There were no controls, no interfaces, no signs of permission. It was a test, or a signal, or a warning. And now that it was open, Earth was no longer isolated. Whatever existed beyond the ring now knew humanity was here. And the silence that followed felt less like peace and more like something waiting to see what humans would do next. Robotic probes were prepared with extreme care because no human was allowed anywhere near the open ring. Every movement near it felt dangerous, as if the space itself could break. The machines were small, heavily shielded, and controlled from a distance. Their only task was to observe and return data, not to touch, not to interact, just to see what existed on the other side. The first probe moved slowly toward the dark surface inside the ring. The moment it crossed the boundary, its signal wavered, then stabilized. Cameras activated and began sending images back to the control room. What appeared on the screens made the room fall completely silent because it was not emptiness, and it was not another planet like Earth. The images showed enormous structures floating in open space, not orbiting stars, but arranged with impossible balance, like cities built on nothing. Some were larger than continents, covered in geometric patterns that shifted as if alive. There were no lights, yet everything was visible, glowing softly from within, as if powered by forces humans could not understand. As the probe moved forward, stars appeared in the distance, but they were wrong. Some burned in colors never seen before. Others were dark, collapsed, yet still surrounded by artificial frameworks, suggesting they were being studied or preserved long after death. It became clear that this place was not meant for living beings. It felt more like a museum of the universe itself. The probe sent back measurements that made no sense. Time appeared stretched. Seconds inside the ring did not match seconds on Earth. Distances shifted as if space folded inward. The probe traveled only a few meters. Yet its sensors reported movement across vast cosmic scales, as though the gate ignored normal limits entirely. Then the most disturbing discovery appeared. Massive observation platforms, aligned toward countless worlds. Some platforms focused on stars, others on planets, and a few on something else entirely. Distant blue spheres that matched Earth's structure almost perfectly. This meant the system was not just observing random space, it was watching developing civilizations. The realization hit hard. This gate was never designed for travel. There were no paths, no routes, no destinations meant to be reached. It was built to see, to monitor, and to record. The probe was not visiting another place. It was stepping into a viewing layer that existed outside normal reality. Data suggested the gate had been active long before humans existed, quietly observing the universe, cataloging growth and destruction on a scale far beyond human history. Some recorded stars no longer existed, proving the system had watched entire eras rise and vanish without interference. When the second probe was sent, it returned even more unsettling images, traces of civilizations that had reached great technological heights, then disappeared. Their worlds marked only by artificial scars and silent ruins. Patterns suggested sudden collapse rather than slow decline, as if something had gone wrong the moment they reached a certain level of advancement. Scientists began to understand that the gate was not neutral. It was selective. It focused more intensely on worlds that showed rapid growth, energy manipulation, and space expansion. Earth appeared among those targets, glowing faintly in the data layers, meaning humanity had been observed long before discovering the gate. One expert pointed out something chilling. None of the observed advanced civilizations were still active. Every single one had ended. The gate showed their final stages clearly. Energy spikes, unstable systems, and then silence. It was impossible to ignore the pattern. Progress followed by disappearance, repeated again and again. The probes also detected no signs of beings operating the system. No movement, no commands, no control centers. The observation network appeared fully automated, designed to function without supervision for millions of years, which raised a terrifying question. Who built it, and why did they leave it running? As the probes continued transmitting, subtle changes appeared in the images, not from the distant structures, but from Earth's position in the observation field. The clarity increased, focus sharpened, as if the system had adjusted its attention, reacting to humanity's awareness of being watched. The final data burst from the probes showed something impossible to ignore. The observation layer was not passive anymore. It was responding, recalibrating itself based on human interaction, suggesting the gate was not just showing what existed beyond. It was evaluating the ones who had opened it. And in that moment, the team understood the most frightening truth of all. The gate was never meant to be opened by humans. And now that it was, Earth had become part of a record where no civilization had ever survived the ending. The change was subtle at first, almost easy to miss. Instruments near the gate began to show small fluctuations that did not match any known reaction pattern. Scientists thought it was leftover instability from the probes, but the readings kept shifting in a focused way, as if the system had found a target. Earth's local magnetic field near the site bent inward slightly, not enough to cause damage, but enough to be measurable. Compasses failed completely. Satellites passing overhead reported brief sensor blindness, and communication signals experienced tiny delays that should not have been possible. It was as if space itself was being adjusted with careful precision. Then the data analysts noticed something unsettling. The changes were not spreading randomly. They were centered on human activity. Every spike matched moments when people approached the gate, spoke near it, or transmitted signals toward it. The structure was not reacting to Earth, it was reacting to humans. As this realization spread through the control room, fear grew quietly. The gate had observed civilizations before, but now it seemed to be focusing, narrowing its attention like a lens. The observation layers seen by the probes began updating faster. Earth's image sharpened further, pulling in more detail than before. Physiologists monitoring the crew noticed strange effects. Some people reported dizziness. Others felt pressure behind their eyes. Heart rates changed without physical cause. Yet medical scans showed nothing wrong. The effect disappeared when individuals moved farther from the gate, confirming that whatever was happening was localized and intentional. Computers analyzing the data reached a disturbing conclusion. The gate was not just watching passively anymore. It was measuring response, tracking emotional stress, decision-making speed, and biological reactions. The system treated humanity not as observers, but as subjects under evaluation. At the same time, global monitoring stations far from Siberia began detecting faint anomalies, extremely small shifts in Earth's electromagnetic balance, too weak to notice without sensitive equipment, but consistent enough to prove the effect was spreading. Humanity's interaction with the gate had crossed a threshold. One scientist described it in simple terms. Humanity had made enough noise in the universe to be noticed, not through radio waves or satellites, but through interaction with something ancient. The gate was responding the way a system responds when new data enters its range. Attempts to shut down the site's equipment made no difference. Even when all transmissions stopped, the reactions continued, which meant the gate no longer needed active input. It had already identified humanity as relevant. The observation process had moved to a new phase. Then came the most chilling discovery. The observation platform seen through the probes began shifting alignment, slowly turning away from other worlds and locking more directly onto Earth, as if priority had been reassigned. Other civilizations had once held that focus, and none of them had survived long after. Military leaders demanded answers, asking whether the gate was a weapon. Scientists could not say yes or no, but one thing was clear. The system was capable of influencing physical laws without force, without explosions, and without resistance. It did not need to attack to be dangerous. As analysis continued, patterns emerged. Civilizations observed by the gate showed similar signs shortly before their collapse: localized space distortions, energy instability, and increased system focus. It was not destruction by invasion, but by consequence. Like touching something far beyond safe limits, humanity was now showing the same early signs, not because the gate was hostile, but because it was active, and its activity affected reality itself. The gate was not angry, not curious, and not emotional. It was simply responding as designed. One expert summarized it clearly. The moment humans opened the gate, the universe responded, not with words or ships, but with attention. And attention from something this old and powerful was more dangerous than any weapon. As night fell over the frozen site, the gate remained silent and stable. Yet the feeling among the team had changed completely. Humanity was no longer alone in its ignorance. Something vast had noticed them, and the realization settled in heavily. Being noticed was not the same as being welcomed, and whatever came next would not be decided by force, but by how humanity chose to respond to being seen. The team spent days analyzing the signals, trying to understand their full meaning. Patterns emerged that were too precise to be random. Sequences within sequences, repeated in ways that suggested intelligence far beyond human understanding. Mathematicians working on the project realized the signals were layered with warnings, instructions, and what appeared to be historical records. Decoding took hours, then days, with some of the data resisting all algorithms. But slowly, fragments became clear. The messages told of civilizations that had reached a level similar to humanity, showing ingenuity, ambition, and rapid technological growth. Yet each of them ended in catastrophe shortly after engaging with the gate. The pattern was consistent across dozens of examples, and each ended with the same finality: complete disappearance. The historical records embedded in the signals included star maps, planetary positions, and markers of energy usage, showing that the observed civilizations had created devices and systems similar to those humans were only beginning to imagine. Yet the signals emphasized one key lesson repeatedly: overreach, impatience, and misuse of advanced technology led to collapse. Some of the encoded messages appeared almost like voices, rhythms, and tones designed to be interpreted as emotional signals, perhaps intended to teach or warn future civilizations. Scientists struggled to reconcile the idea that a machine buried under ice could carry messages in ways that appealed to emotion as well as logic. Yet the evidence was clear. The warnings were deliberate, not accidental. One section of the messages outlined what had happened to previous civilizations in chilling detail, showing the moments they had crossed thresholds of energy manipulation or cosmic interaction. Then illustrating how the gate had adjusted the environment around them, subtly but inevitably, leading to failure, collapse, or extinction. Humanity could see the pattern repeating in its own data, suggesting the same forces could act here if caution was ignored. As researchers continued decoding, some signals appeared to be predictive, showing outcomes based on choices, essentially simulations of what would happen if a civilization followed certain paths. The more advanced the civilization, the greater the risk of attracting attention from the gate system. The evidence suggested that awareness and ambition triggered monitoring, and without care, it triggered consequences. The warning embedded in the signals became undeniable. The gate was not neutral. It was a guardian of sorts, designed to observe and protect the larger system of the universe, to prevent younger civilizations from interfering with forces they could not control. Every civilization that had ignored or underestimated this warning had vanished, leaving only the records in the signals as proof of their existence. Some scientists proposed that the signals were also a test, checking whether a civilization could recognize and follow the warnings. Humans were already being evaluated based on their response to discovery. The gate had observed every drill, probe, and measurement, and now measured decisions, caution, and restraint. The system was not passive, it was judging. The signals also contained instructions, subtle and complex, showing how to safely interact, how to stop triggering attention, and how to avoid the fates of previous civilizations. Following them required precision, patience, and humility, qualities not always common to human ambition, but necessary for survival. Ignoring them, even slightly, could lead to irreversible consequences. As the team discussed the findings, the gravity of the situation became clear. The gate had existed for eons, observing countless civilizations, and the signals made it obvious that humanity had arrived at a critical moment. One wrong decision could bring the same end as those before. The responsibility weighed heavily, because this was not just a discovery, it was a choice. Late one night, the lead scientist reviewed the decoded messages again, noticing subtle patterns suggesting that the gate would respond to restraint, careful observation, and deliberate inaction, while aggressive probing or misuse would accelerate destructive outcomes. The message was simple but terrifying. The universe has rules older than humans, and ignoring them is fatal. By the time the signals had been fully interpreted, every person at the site understood one truth completely. The gate was a warning system disguised as a relic, designed to teach caution through observation and consequence. Humanity had been noticed, and the next moves would determine whether the species survived to continue learning or joined the silent records of vanished civilizations. The scientists realized that continuing to probe the gate, sending signals, or moving equipment closer could trigger consequences. The team faced a choice between curiosity and caution, and every instinct in them wanted to explore further. But the warnings embedded in the signals and the history of past civilizations weighed heavily on their minds. Discussions stretched into the night, debates between scientists, military advisors, and engineers. The temptation to advance technology and claim knowledge was strong, but the more they analyzed the data, the more it became clear that restraint was the only safe option. The gate had already noticed humanity, and pushing further could risk the same fate as every previous civilization. The lead scientists proposed a radical idea: to shut down all operations, remove probes, and seal the area, to make no further contact. It was not an act of defeat, but of strategy. Recognizing that survival sometimes required patience and humility, every person at the site agreed, even those who had once argued for more aggressive exploration. As shutdown procedures began, the gate reacted subtly, not violently, but with minor adjustments. Low-frequency pulses changed, the light distortions fluctuated slightly, and local magnetic fields shifted for a brief moment. It was as if the system was testing whether humans understood the warnings. Acknowledging their decision to step back, equipment was removed carefully, probes retracted, and the drill sites were filled in with ice and soil to restore the surface. Every action was done in silence, as if speaking to the structure. Humans had become participants in a delicate negotiation, one without words, only gestures of caution and compliance. The team also began documenting their own responses, creating a record of every choice, every hesitation, and every decision, knowing that this information might be monitored by the gate itself. The act of restraint became as important as any measurement or experiment, a deliberate show that humanity could recognize limits. Authorities allowed a controlled retreat. Helicopters lifted scientists and equipment away from the site. Satellite feeds were redirected, and the region was declared off-limits, even as the gate remained buried beneath ice. No one knew for certain if the structure was still active, but the subtle environmental readings suggested it had paused, observing from a distance rather than reacting directly. Months later, scientists returned to analyze data remotely, ensuring that nothing further disturbed the site. The low-frequency pulses continued, but remained stable. Signals from Earth did not provoke changes, and it became clear that the choice to step back had been acknowledged by the gate. Survival depended not on power, but on wisdom. The decision spread beyond the team, serving as a lesson for global authorities, universities, and research organizations. The story of restraint became a symbol, proof that humanity could act responsibly when confronted with forces far beyond comprehension. The gate had tested not strength, but judgment, and humans had passed the first test. Experts debated the philosophical implications, discussing how civilizations often fail not because of external threats, but because of internal ambition. The gate had demonstrated that intelligence without patience is dangerous, and that observation, understanding, and careful choices are sometimes the greatest achievements a species can make. Even within the team, there was a sense of pride mixed with humility, knowing that curiosity had been tempered, and that humanity had avoided the fate of countless civilizations before them. Every decision made during the shutdown was a testament to restraint, proving that survival is sometimes about restraint, not action. Years later, the site remained untouched, frozen beneath Siberia, and humanity had gained something rare: the knowledge that power and curiosity must be balanced with wisdom. The choice to step back had prevented disaster, teaching a lesson that was both simple and profound. Sometimes the greatest achievement is knowing when not to act. As remote sensors continued monitoring the area, subtle signals from the gate suggested ongoing observation, but without hostility. It was clear that the gate had acknowledged humans as cautious, intelligent observers, and that for now, Earth had passed a test designed not to reward ambition, but to reward patience, understanding, and restraint. Years passed, and the Siberian site remained frozen and silent, untouched by humans. Yet the memory of what had occurred there lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Scientists, engineers, and officials often reflected on the discovery, understanding that it had changed humanity's perspective forever. Remote sensors continued to record subtle activity around the buried gate. Faint pulses and energy fluctuations that seemed deliberate but calm. It was clear the structure was still aware, still observing, yet it did not act aggressively, suggesting that humanity's choice to step back had been acknowledged and respected. The story of the gate spread quietly among scientific communities. Classified reports shared under strict conditions, yet the knowledge influenced research in profound ways. Theories about advanced civilizations, cosmic observation, and universal monitoring became central to understanding humanity's place in the universe. Students and scientists began to study patience and restraint as essential qualities for survival, not just ethics or philosophy. Philosophers debated the implications, suggesting that the universe itself contained forces that measured intelligence not by action or conquest, but by understanding and humility. Humanity had learned a lesson that could not be taught in schools or laboratories, a lesson encoded in the silence and power of something older than Earth itself. Books, simulations, and remote experiments began to incorporate the gate as an example of cosmic awareness, not as a threat, but as a teacher. Humanity's awareness of being observed changed the way scientific research was conducted. Every project considered the long-term consequences of pushing limits too fast, and caution became as valued as curiosity. Leaders around the world took note of the discovery's significance. Realizing that power alone could not ensure survival in a universe full of unknowns, policies regarding exploration, technology, and interstellar ambitions began to change subtly. Humanity had experienced a moment of restraint that shaped collective decision-making for generations. Even ordinary people felt the impact. The story of the Siberian Gate became part of culture, a quiet reminder that there were forces beyond comprehension, and that survival depended not on taking every opportunity, but on knowing which doors should remain closed. The tale inspired caution, respect, and the idea that wisdom is a form of strength. Scientists revisiting the site remotely discovered that the energy patterns remained stable, showing no signs of deterioration or malfunction. The gate continued its observation, yet it allowed humanity to exist, suggesting that intelligence can be both powerful and patient, and that recognition does not always mean interference. Sometimes it simply means being noticed. Over time, humanity began to change subtly, not in appearance, but in mindset. Research programs emphasized ethical limits, curiosity was balanced with foresight, and decisions were made with long-term survival in mind. The gate had become a silent mentor, teaching lessons that no teacher, text, or lecture could impart. The most remarkable effect was psychological. The knowledge that the universe was vast, ancient, and aware instilled both humility and determination. Humans realized that they were not alone, not in companionship, but in observation, that their actions mattered in a context far larger than Earth, and that survival required wisdom as much as technology. For those who had witnessed the gate's activation firsthand, the memory remained vivid, a reminder of how close humanity had come to disaster. The choice to step back, to respect the unknown, and to act with restraint had preserved the species. A rare moment in history where caution outweighed curiosity and patience outweighed ambition. As decades passed, the frozen site in Siberia became legendary, a symbol of both danger and hope. Humanity continued to develop, explore, and innovate, but always with the silent lesson in mind. The universe is watching, and sometimes the greatest achievement is knowing when not to act. In the end, the gate's presence reinforced a universal truth, that intelligence and power alone are not enough to survive in a cosmos filled with ancient, unseen forces. Humanity had passed the first great test, not by conquering, but by understanding, observing, and choosing restraint, ensuring that Earth remained a place where life could continue, adapt, and grow under the quiet gaze of something far older and wiser.